everybody. A couple of weeks ago, I ran a piece on a Kickstarter for the first, I guess, official adaptation, comics adaptation of the Fritz Lang classic from 1927, Metropolis, and its tie-in with another comics property called Ghost Agents. Well, I get to talk today with the mastermind behind it all, Mr. Rocko Jerome. And so, welcome, sir.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on. I sure appreciate it.
Let us begin by you fill me in on what ghost agents are, because I did just mention I'm not familiar with it at all. And you said
Sure.
you're super indie, so go ahead.
Yeah, we're about as indie as it gets. We've covered a lot of ground in the last couple of years, if I do say so myself. Ghost Agents, you can always find out more about whatever we're doing at any given time at ghostagents.net. I'll point that out first. It's a spy-fi action adventure comic, which is really just an excuse for a lot of fantastic artists to have a vehicle to show what they can do, right? I call myself the writer and producer of that. I think of myself as being sort of a cross between like the Quentin Tarantino writer part of his brain and persona and like a Robert Evans at Paramount, because I handle the comics on the front end. I write the scripts and give them to the artist. And then on the back end, when it comes time to produce them, with my partner Eli Schwab from Cosmic Lion Productions, right? So we make these great big treasury edition size comic books, right? Just like they used to make in the 70s. And they also happen to be on newsprint. Now we've had two of these to date. One is called Ghost Agents Apocalyptico, and then the other one is called Ghost Agents Crimson Reckoning, right? I'm very, very proud of these. We print these on newsprints, right? They don't really do this anymore. And as you can see, the artists get a lot of latitude to bring their own attitude and do all sorts of wild stuff with the format here. Really pride myself on giving the artist the ability to just sort of go crazy with it and just do work that really sort of presses up against the boundaries of what the medium and art form of comics are and can be. And they respond in kind. How I find these guys is I'll just see some work on the internet from an artist I like. I'll reach out to them and say, hey, cool work. Do you want to work with me and get paid for it? Usually the answer is yes. And then from there, we're off to the races. I do Kickstarter campaigns to fund these things and run them. Currently, we're doing our 7th one. It's for Ghost Agents / Metropolis, right? So this will be the last of these treasuries.
Nice
the
segue.
trilogy of treasuries, as I'm saying, will be Ghost Agents on one side, all new Ghost Agents material. Flip it over and upside down. It'll have Metropolis. So either way you look at it, it's right side up. And it's sort of marrying the two properties, right? Because as we're going to talk about today, Metropolis is now in the public domain.
Yes. So let's go. I'm not even sure where to begin there, except I'm still dazzled by you're on newsprint for readers of a certain age. That you may have the best smelling books on the market.
Oh man,
as far as I'm
the
concerned.
tactile experience is fantastic.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you mentioned of a certain age, because here's the thing that we thought about a lot as we were putting this thing together, and some of the criticisms that we got from people, and sort of, people trying to save us from ourselves, would say like, well, newsprint isn't better, it's not good. People don't know what to do with newsprint now. They expect better paper. It's only old fogies, Generation X and boomers and older than that are going to appreciate that it's on newsprint. I found that to not be the case. This is a very accessible book. It's made up of a lot of short stories, right? They all take place in the same world, but can all be read independent of each other. It is designed for anyone who appreciates art to be able to just look at it, see something in it that they think is good, and typically they want to buy it from me.
Well, let's get to Metropolis, which is, yes, it's in public domain.
Yeah.
What gave you the idea to connect it to, one, to adapt it, and two, to connect it to Ghost Agents?
Well, so it's not strictly an adaptation. This is all sort of like in the same way it's stories that are sort of in that world. So it's not really a beat for beats adaptation of the book. One of my favorite things about Metropolis is that it was made before there were really any rules of cinema, right? It barely existed. People were still sort of feeling around and figuring out what it was. All those silent movies are undeniably eerie, right? I mean, it's like you're looking at literal ghosts in a way. And it was still wide open, of what was what and the nature of filmmaking. So you watch that thing, and there's just things about it that are just like off to our modern eye, right? Because we sort of expect a certain sort of cinematography, and then when you watch Metropolis, it's like, man, we're all over the place, and the special effects are still effective. The story is still haunting. I think that the sort of aspects of the machines taking over the people in the lowest rungs of society have to toil and break themselves so the people on top can live lives of comfort and ease.
So it takes place in 2023.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I mean,
Right.
it's like AI. So a lot of that gets into what we're doing with this. We're sort of, it's not lost on me that a lot of people, an alarming amount of people, are using artificial intelligence and programs that I won't say the name of to sort of make their own, what they think of as making their own books. Whereas what I do is I work with human beings, right? Me and these artists collaborate one on one to make these stories and this art, right? And the big line that comes from Metropolis is, and I might mangle this because it's been translated several times from the original
Hmm.
German, but without the heart, there can be no understanding between the hand and the mind, right?
Yeah.
And machines can do a pretty good job of faking the hand. And now they're getting good at maybe faking the mind, but they'll never have the heart. It doesn't exist there.
I
So I feel like
love it.
it's very, very topical at this point. We're pointedly going at that idea in this book, and I'm just very excited for people to see it. It's going to be so cool. And to answer the question of when Metropolis first kind of came to me, just as sort of a, I was talking to somebody at my local comic shop, um, and we were talking about how Metropolis is sort of like, is it anybody's favorite movie? Is there anybody who loves Metropolis the way that people love Star Wars? Probably very few, if any. But it's still something that's like in our lexicon, and so many roads lead back to that. Right? The influence is immense, and not just on movies and not just on science fiction, but in music. Queen, where we're fascinated. Madonna, the "Express Yourself" video was based in Metropolis imagery and Metropolis stuff. There was also the Whitney Houston movie, The Bodyguard. Like the character she was playing, like was wearing like false Maria stuff and doing robot dances. Like there's so much of Metropolis that's just sort of in the DNA of everything. Obviously, Superman is another example.
Yeah.
So saying that you're a fan of Metropolis is almost like saying you're a fan of grass, or bricks, because it's just so much a part of everything that it's inescapable, right? So
Yeah.
being able to lead back into that and sort of tap into it and make it part of the immense timeline of this ghost agents thing that I'm doing, just really happy to be able to do it, and it's cool. And I'm thrilled with the work that I've seen come back, and I think it's going to blow a lot of people's minds when they see this book.
Great. I mean, it's let's you talk about it, it's like being a fan of grass. I will say, because I think it's unfair to ask anybody what is your favorite film. So like, because it changes by day to day. Something
Sure.
resonates a different way. Metropolis remains in my top five,
Yeah,
and will
I'd
be
put it easily in my
controversial.
top 10 at least.
Will be controversial and acknowledge that for me at least, the version of Metropolis that I love the most is the one that Giorgio Moroder put
Yes,
together in
uh,
'85.
indeed.
And you mentioned to me earlier that that was the first time you saw it as well.
It was, yeah, from the cult section of the Red Draft video that used to be here in Louisville, Kentucky, where I live. I rented it, and it was mainly because Freddie Mercury had a song in it. And I was a
Hmm.
massive fan of Queen, still love Queen,
Yeah.
um, and that was really what sort of brought me to that, because I could tell that it was, I would see the robot around and stuff like that. So, and it was something, and it was just, I was all of 13 when I saw that, and it was like, wow, like we are really through the looking glass here. This is something else. And a lot of the music that was in that, I was not familiar with Marauder before that. But yeah, I mean, it's really, I think that thing's pretty effective. It was certainly the version that was accessible for a lot of people.
Hmm.
I think
Yeah.
it kind of maybe comes down to being a case of one day it will please us to remember even this, you know, like,
Yeah.
oh, that's the version with the pop songs. I want to see the extra 2 hours of footage with all the reels they found in Brazil or whatever. And I don't necessarily know if it's better for you, you know?
Well, a lot was missing too, and that was a work of passion for people who don't know it. George Moroder was a music producer and composer, uh, who did one of the best films, which is the restoration of Metropolis, and one of the worst, "Can't Stop the Music" with
Wow.
Village People,
Yeah.
but which I've also seen a couple of times, which is a
Yeah.
couple of
Right.
times too many. But that was a work of passion. Say what you will, if you're somebody going, his music, but it was done because he truly, truly loved the property, and he found stills if he couldn't find footage, and colorized, but not colorized the way we think of it. He would just add little neon touches to things,
Yeah.
and he recaptured the story, working from the original script, doing his best to recreate what
Yeah.
could be.
I listen, I
Uh,
have nothing but love for Marauder and like all those kinds of guys because it really is, and all those people, I guess I should say, because it's really that time period and that place, that very European kind of thing. Nobody can really quite be like that now without it being some sort of a parody or some sort of an ironic like wink and a nod.
mhm.
You know, like Marauder was a very real, authentic character in a way that we don't have a lot
No,
of.
absolutely. And let's, focus again on the influence of Metropolis. In my article, I mentioned, Roy Thomas borrowed from it twice,
Yeah.
created an Elseworlds. But I remember reading the All Star Squadron and going, wait a minute, this robot looks like Maria. Oh
Uh-huh.
my God, it actually is
Yeah.
Maria. And trying to go around because it wasn't public domain then. Yeah,
Sure.
and it is imagery of Maria the robot has been with us. I can remember as a little kid. I'm and now you've outed yourself at age wise. I'm older,
Sure.
and I can remember being like 3 years old, and Creature Features on our local channel would have Maria as a piece of the intro, and I saw a glimpse of it at the first convention I ever went to. At I think it was 11 or 12, and so I mean, and of course, Star Wars. Not only if you name Star Wars your favorite film, I'm sorry, people, but C-3PO was
Uh-huh.
absolutely ripped off
That's
from
100%.
Maria.
That's
You know,
100%.
you look at that original concept art, and it's
Yeah.
Maria.
Well, and Metropolis for me, it was one of those things where it's like, there's like certain anybody who is like us who obsesses over these things and is interested in these types of things. It almost feels to me in a way like we can see colors other people can't, in a way. Like I think about I got the Metropolis poster for Christmas one year. And it was
Hmm.
like from my aunt. And it was my aunt didn't know anything about it. My mom just said, here's what you can get. Here's what you
Nice.
can get them. Secret Santa. I don't remember what the setup was. I mean, I may as well have just been given $12 and went to buy it myself from the whatever the shop. And I remember like my cousin just looking at it and being like he just was like laughing at me and just like, What is this?" And I was like, "It's a movie that I really like." He's like, "I've never heard of it." And that's like the end of the conversation.
Oh, that's too bad because
Movie I never heard of. So
eh,
it's like Metropolis for me was one of several things at a very particular time that made me feel like the world was bigger than my middle school and that I would have a place in it someday because I would eventually be able to meet and talk to people who also know what Metropolis is, and it wouldn't just be the people I was stuck being around as a minor.
no, that's again, that's fascinating. I could talk to you for hours about again the impact of art. I love the way you just phrased that. That this art from 1927, uh, that is so influential, made a middle school Rocco feel like this isn't it.
Yeah,
And I remember actually shortly after the Marauder version came out, Brigitte Helm, who plays Maria and the robot, passed away, and she was like in her 90s, and it was news because of Marauder having,
yeah.
it had been in theaters, and
Interesting
it
how that
was
happens, huh?
yeah, and it was just this to me like, wait a minute, I just saw this young, vibrant, you get this sense of, which is what the movie is also about,
Yeah,
that mortality, that humanity that we so easily lose.
right.
So we could get terribly philosophical, and I won't. Instead, I would say, please, people, go to Kickstarter. I will also provide links to find the movie.
Appreciate it.
And I will also say I got to throw out the other one, which is so bizarre to me. I mean, it's not. It's just how influential this film was, which is that Tezuka did it. It did a
Yeah,
version. It's different. It's a lot more. Osamu Tezuka is like the Walt Disney of Japan,
yeah, sure.
and but he was that influenced that he had to retell it and remix it through the lens of post-war Japan.
Yeah.
And I mean, any one of us be lucky to have that kind of impact. And
Oh, of course.
thank you for carrying it on. And so, Rocco, this has been a great conversation, and I really appreciate it. And the
Yeah, thanks
best
so
of
much.
luck with this. I can't wait to have the book in my hands, which I'm sure is
Beautiful.
still several months away, but
Yeah.
that's okay. Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any Fanboy Planet video content. And visit fanboyplanet.com for other features, reviews, interviews, previews, and of course, listening to the Fanboy Planet podcast. And remember, use your powers for good.